Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to take another look at Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager, and specifically, we are going to take a look at our CentOS virtual machine that we have installed and started to work with a little bit in our earlier videos. Now, this video is going to sort of pick up at a different location. In other words, it's going to assume that maybe you've already went through your installation wizard. Maybe you've even shut down your virtual machine at this point, and you're coming back now and working with Linux again for the second time. So the first thing that you want to do is you notice here that your virtual machine is powered off. And much like any other computer that's powered off, the first thing that we need to do is simply turn it on. And this will give us an opportunity now to go through the boot screen and actually look to see the stages of our boot. And so the first thing that you're going to notice here is that we have a fairly small screen. There's our VirtualBox splash screen followed by our grub bootloader. You're also being prompted again for that auto capture, which is probably pretty annoying at this point. We can go ahead and hide some of the notifications. Again, we will cover how to avoid this mouse pointer integration issue that we are running into, but that's not the purpose of this particular video. So again, now our splash screen. And in just a second, we will get to our login screen. Now, my goal here is I want us to focus on how to log in and out of Linux, CentOS, and also which account to use. And so the very first thing that we want to do is go ahead and log into that local account that you created. In this case, this is my Gregory Myers or G Myers account password that we had created earlier. You'll notice again that my screen is pretty small. Again, a quick reminder that we can select the display settings to adjust the screen size. In just a second, my desktop will come up. And what I can do then is just simply right-click, go to display settings. And then from the earlier video, I discovered that basically something around 1680 by 1050 seems to work okay for the purposes of my monitor as well as this video. So again, now, hopefully you've had an opportunity to play around a little bit with the activities, and you can sort of navigate now through the UI in our Linux environment. Now, let's talk a little bit about accounts. So right now, we technically have two accounts. If you also include the VirtualBox user account that was created automatically for us, there's technically three. That is for management purposes, but the two that we're going to be using are going to be that account that you've created. In this case, my Gregory Myers account or G Myers account, as well as a root account. Now, to understand what the purpose of the root account is going to be, is it's sort of like the administrator account that you would encounter on a Windows machine or on a Mac. The root account is built in by default on a Linux installation. You would use it, for instance, for the purposes of installing software. Occasionally, you will also run certain services under the root account, but in general, it is a really bad idea to do everything with the root account. Hence the reason that we've created now this second account or this G Myers account. However, this G Myers account is limited in what it can do. And as a matter of fact, in just a second, we're going to see what it can't do and how we're going to get around that. So essentially what we're going to do is cover a couple of topics here. Particularly, we're going to show how you can move in and out of an account, and then maybe make some changes as we go along. So the first thing that you're going to note here is up here on the right. You should have the ability to power off and log out. We could, for instance, power off the virtual machine. Maybe you're done using your CentOS install for right now, but you also have the ability to log out, in which case then this just simply puts us back to our login screen. Now, you'll notice that we only have one account listed. Now, I did mention that there was another account, and that is our root account. And so what we want to do now is we want to select not listed, and we want to type in root, and you want to put in the password that you put in earlier in your installation. And now what we've done is we have logged in as the administrative account. Now, as I mentioned, it is a bad idea to constantly use the root account. And as a matter of fact, it's going to prompt you for this. So running a session as a privileged user should be avoided. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to handle this. What we want to do is we want to allow that G Myers account, or allow your local account, to be able to run as root. And we'll see there's a command called sudo that will allow for us to do things with administrative privileges. However, though, we have to do some things to allow for that to happen. Again, Linux is a little bit different than Windows and Mac, although it is similar in that it is an intentional act, much like run as administrator on a Windows machine, or that alternate prompt that you get on a Mac. So again, this should not be completely alien to you. So if we click in the window again, we'll notice that our CentOS display has shrunk. Probably not a bad idea to just simply go ahead and change the display settings once more, just so we have a positive experience, although we will technically not be in our root account for very long. I'm again going to bounce back to my 1680 by 1050 and keep changes. And now what we want to do is we want to modify the permissions so that we can run as root with our G Myers account. Now, let's go to our settings for just a second. You'll actually see an alternate way of going about creating accounts. I just want to take just a second to point this out before we get too far into this. You'll see that I have the ability to add a user. I can also edit a user. And when you add a user, now when you're logged in as root, you can technically add them as an administrator. Again, we have the option to have the enterprise log on, set the password for the user, and again, a lot of administrative functionality, which again gives us a couple of different ways to go about doing this. However, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to go back up here to activities, and I'm going to launch a console. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to run the user mod command. Now, you can see here that I just typed in the word user and hit tab a couple of times, and it actually gives me some command line functionality, including user add, user delete, user mod. I think you can guess just by the name of these commands what they do. We're going to be interested in our user mod, and much like in other operating systems, you would expect or hope there would be a help for some of the functionality. In Linux, it's typically going to be dash dash and then help, although there are certain commands that also accept question mark, H, and so on. But essentially what this does is this pulls up the help for the user mod function. First thing that we want to do is we want to add or append to the groups, so -A and -G, our user G Myers. Now, the question is, which account do we need to, or rather, which group do we need to add that user to in order to be able to allow them to run as root? And that is the wheel group. So I'm going to leave a couple of links in the comments for both the idea of sudo and also the wheel groups so that you can get familiar with the purposes behind these. But let's go ahead and set this up. We'll put in our user mod -A -G, our group wheel, and then lastly, our G Myers. And unless you have a typo, regrettably, this particular command doesn't tell you if you've done it right. So it's kind of a little bit disconcerting, but no error is actually good. And so if you did get an error, check the name of the group as well as the account name that you have created. At this point, this could arguably be the last time that we ever log in with our root account, which is actually a good thing. And so what we'll do is we'll repeat the process that we did for the local account, and that you simply come up here to the top right and you choose power off and log out. And we simply log out of our root account. Now, when we come over to our gmyers account, we will be able to use a command called sudo. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and log in once again with gmyers. Password. Again, we will have to do this annoying resize. And hopefully only for a few times more. So we'll go here to our display settings. Again, change it to 1680 by 1050 or whatever works well for you. And then under activities, we can go to the terminal. And probably the first thing that we would want to do as our newly privileged user is to make sure that our CentOS distribution is up to date. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the Yum package manager in a later video. We'll actually look at a couple of different package managers. But for right now, what I want you to do is I want you to run the sudo command, which then allows for you to run a command as root, super user, sudoku, whatever you want to think of it as. There's a number of different ways to remind yourself or to remember what sudo does. At this point, what we want to do is we simply want to run the Yum package manager update with a /y. And what this will do is it'll simply update whatever files have been improved upon or updated since you downloaded your CentOS distribution. Now, the first time you hit sudo or type in sudo rather, you'll actually get prompted with this. We trust you have received the usual lecture from the local system administrator. Translation, be careful about how you use sudo. And at this point then, and every point forward, whenever you run sudo for the first time, for instance, logging in, or if it's been a while since you've used sudo, you will have to enter in your password. Now, you'll notice that unlike with the logon prompt, my cursor didn't move when I typed in the password. It's a little disconcerting for most users to enter in their password on a command prompt. Obviously, wouldn't want to see that in clear text, but I have, in fact, entered my password, and if I've entered it correctly and hit enter, then the sudo yum-y update should attempt to connect to the Yum repository and start downloading the relevant CentOS Stream 9 updates and patches. Now, this is going to take a little bit, so I would encourage you to be on a good internet connection when you do this, because essentially what's happening is your virtual machine is borrowing your laptop or desktop's internet connection. We will talk a little bit about how that process is handled through NAT or network address translation. But again, we're going to leave that for a later video. I encourage you to just simply let your Linux CentOS distribution update, and we will come back in another video and start working on the issues with the guest edition installation, including adding some additional packages to our CentOS install. Another thing you can consider doing while this is running is go ahead and take a second to do your second installation, this time of your server. I'll briefly cover that in another video. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And then hopefully you've found this video useful, and thank you for watching.